right. That's what I thought. 13. Let's start that. Good morning, YouTube. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Okay. Let me bring this up here. $13, not $15. I'm about to find the wrong chapter. Okay. All right, beautiful people. Top of the day. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is March the 15th, 2021, day 102 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. And of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 771. Today we are reading Judges 13, 14, and 15. And then we're picking up in the Legends of the Jews on page 408. Actually, I think it's 409. No, right. That's right. Court of Saul, 408. I was right at first. Okay. All right, beautiful people. So let's go ahead and get started with the Shema. Remember, the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting at verse 3. I would encourage you to read the whole chapter. Read the whole chapter. All right, here. Therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us, in a land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, He is one God. And you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always, that He might preserve us alive, as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our God, as He has commanded us. All right, y'all. So let's hop right on over here to Judges chapter 13. Let's get started. Right there. All right, y'all. Judges chapter 13. The birth of Samson. Belinda Brown. Good morning. Accounted for. Check. Again, the Israelites did evil in Yahuwah's sight. So Yahuwah handed them over to the Philistines, who oppressed them for 40 years. In those days, a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in the town of Zorah. His wife was unable to become pregnant, and they had no children. The angel of Yahuwah appeared to Manoah's wife and said, even though you have been unable to have children, you will soon become pregnant and give birth to a son. So be careful. You must not drink wine or any alcohol or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for he will be dedicated to Yahuwah as a Nazirite from birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines. The woman ran and told her husband, a man of Yahuwah appeared to me. He looked like one of Yahuwah's angels, terrifying to see. I didn't ask him where he was from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he told me, you will become pregnant and give birth to a son. You must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food, for your son will be dedicated to Yahuwah as a Nazirite from the moment of his birth until the day of his death. Shalom, Mom, shalom. Then Manoah prayed to Yahuwah, saying, Oh, Yah, please let the man of God come back to us again and give us more instructions about this son who is to be born. Yahuwah answered Manoah's prayer, and the angel of Yahuwah appeared once again to his wife as she was sitting in the field. But her husband Manoah was not with her. So she quickly ran and told her husband, "The man who appeared to me the other day is here again." Manoah ran back with his wife and asked, "Are you the man who spoke to my wife the other day?" "Yes," he replied, "I am." So Manoah asked him, "When your words come true, what kind of rules should govern the boy's life and work?" The angel of Yahuwah replied, "Be sure your wife follows the instructions I gave her. She must not eat grapes or raisins, drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, or eat any forbidden food." And then Manoah said to the angel of Yahuwah, "Please stay here until we can prepare a young goat for you to eat." "I will stay," the angel of Yahuwah replied, "but I will not eat anything. However, you may prepare a burnt offering as a sacrifice to Yahuwah." Manoah didn't realize it was the angel of Yahuwah. Then Manoah asked the angel of Yahuwah, "What is your name? For when all this comes true, we want to honor you." "Why do you ask my name?" the angel of Yahuwah said. "It is too wonderful for you to understand." Then Manoah took a young goat and the grain offering and offered it on a rock as a sacrifice to Yahuwah. And as Manoah and his wife watched, the angel of Yahuwah did an amazing thing. As the flames from the altar shot up toward the sky, the angel of Yahuwah ascended in the fire. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell with their faces to the ground. The angel did not appear again to Manoah and his wife. Manoah finally realized it was the angel of Yahuwah, and he and his wife said, "We will certainly die, for we have seen Yahuwah." But his wife said, "If Yahuwah were going to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our burnt offering and grain offering. He wouldn't have appeared to us and told us this wonderful thing and done these miracles." When her son was born, she named him Samson, and Yahuwah blessed him as he grew up, and the spirit of Yahuwah began to stir him while he lived in Mahanan Dan, which is located between the towns of Zorah and Eshtaol. Move on to the next chapter, Judges chapter 14. Samson's riddle. One day, when Samson was in Timnah, one of the Philistine women caught his eye. When he returned home, he told his father and mother, "A young Philistine woman in Timnah caught my eye. I want to marry her. Get her for me." His father and mother objected. "Isn't there even one woman in our tribe or among all the Israelites you could marry?" they asked. "Why must you go to the pagan Philistines to find a wife?" But Samson told his father, "Get her for me. She looks good to me." His father and mother didn't realize Yahuwah was at work in this, creating an opportunity to work against the Philistines who ruled over Israel at the time. As Samson and his parents were going down to Timnah, a young lion suddenly attacked Samson near the vineyards of Timnah. At that moment, the spirit of Yahuwah came powerfully upon him, and he ripped the lion's jaws apart with his bare hands. He did it as easily as if it were a young goat, but he didn't tell his father or mother about it. When Samson arrived in Timnah, he talked with the woman and was very pleased with her. Later, when he returned to Timnah for the wedding, he turned off the path to look at the carcass of the lion, and he found that a swarm of bees had made some honey in the carcass. He scooped up some honey into his hands and ate it along the way. He also gave some to his father and mother, and they ate it, but he didn't tell them he had taken the honey from the carcass of the lion. As his father was making final arrangements for the marriage, Samson threw a party at Timnah, as was the custom for elite young men. When the bride's parents saw him, they selected 30 young men from the town to be his companions. Samson said to them, "Let me tell you a riddle. If you solve my riddle during these 7 days of the celebration, I will give you 30 fine linen robes and 30 sets of festive clothing. But if you can't solve it, then you must give me 30 fine linen robes and 30 sets of festive clothing." "All right," they agreed. "Let's hear your riddle." So he said, "Out of the one who eats came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." 3 days later, they were still trying to figure it out. On the fourth day, they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn down your father's house with you in it. Did you invite us to this party just to make us poor? So Samson's wife came to him in tears and said, you don't love me. You hate me. You have given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. I haven't even given an answer to my father or mother, he replied. Why should I tell you? So she cried whenever she was with him and kept it up for the rest of the celebration. At last, on the seventh day, he told her the answer because she was tormenting him with her nagging. Then she explained the riddle to the young men. So before sunset of the seventh day, the men of the town came to Samson with their answer. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Samson replied, if you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle. Then the spirit of Yahuwah came powerfully upon him. He went down to the town of Eshkelon, killed 30 men, took their belongings, and gave their clothing to the men who had solved his riddle. But Samson was furious about what had happened, and he went back home to live with his father and mother. So his wife was given in marriage to the man who had been Samson's best man at the wedding. Judges chapter 15. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a present to his wife. He said, I'm going into my wife's room to sleep with her, but her father wouldn't let him in. I truly thought you must hate her, her father explained, so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead. Samson said, this time I cannot be blamed for everything that I'm going to do to you Philistines. Then he went out and caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together in pairs, and he fastened a torch to each pair of tails. Then he lit the torches and let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines. He burned all their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. He also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. Who did this? The Philistines demanded. Samson, was the reply, because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man. So the Philistines went and got the woman and her father and burnt them to death. Because you did this, Samson vowed, I won't rest until I take revenge on you. So he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. Then he went to live in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines retaliated by setting up camp in Judah and spreading out near the towns of Lehi. The men of Judah asked the Philistines, why are you attacking us? The Philistines replied, we have come to capture Samson. We've come to pay him back for what he did to us. So 3,000 men of Judah went down to get Samson at the cave in the rock of Etam. They said to Samson, don't you realize the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to us? But Samson replied, I only did to them what they did to me. But the men of Judah told him, we have come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. All right, Samson said, but promise me that you won't kill me yourselves. We will only tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines, they replied. We won't kill you. So they tied him up with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. As Samson arrived at Lehi, the Philistines came shouting in triumph. But the spirit of Yahuwah came powerfully upon Samson, and he snapped the ropes on his arms as if they were burnt strands of flax, and they fell from his wrist. Then he found the jawbone of a recently killed donkey. He picked it up and killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Then Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, I've piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men. When he finished his boasting, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was named Jawbone Hill. That's what I'm naming the title today, Jawbone Hill. Okay, look. Samson was now very thirsty, and he cried out to Yahuwah, you have accomplished this great victory by the strength of your servant. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of these pagans? So Yahuwah caused water to gush out of a hollow in the ground at Lehi, and Samson was revived as he drank. Then he named that place the spring of the one who cried out, and it is still in Lehi to this day. Samson judged Israel for 20 years during the period when the Philistines dominated the land. All right, beautiful people. So let's hop on over here to the Legends of the Jews. We'll pick up on page 408. Oh my gosh, y'all, it's cold. Let me turn this fan off. Uh-oh. Kick the table. Sorry. Okay. See my plant behind me? I had to move. The kids be kind of running past my table, and then they be snatching my curtains open, and the leaf came up so big, and as they would snatch it open, it would kind of catch it, and then my other, actually not the other plant, the little runners from these actually grew up and started kind of cutting in. So that's like, oh my gosh, so I had to prune it a little bit, and hopefully she'll go back together. I don't know. I feel some kind of way that her leaf is, we'll see. I ain't gonna mess with it no more. Prune it back. We'll see. Had to put up half. Get out of harm's way. Okay. All right, y'all. We are in chapter. What chapter is this? Chapter 3. Okay. Chapter 3, volume 4, which is the last volume of this book, by the way. Y'all will be done with this in a very short period of time. I haven't figured out what we're going to read as a companion to what we're reading yet. I figured out. But it has to be something full of truth that brings the scriptures to light. I ain't figured it out yet, though. All right. Okay, so page 408. And if you have a smaller book, like I said, it's chapter 3, volume 4. And the little subsection is called The Court of Saul. The most important figure at the court of Saul was his cousin Abner, the son of the witch of Endor. He was a giant of extraordinary size. A wall measuring 6 ells in thickness could be moved more easily than one of Abner's feet. David once chanced to get between the feet of Abner as he lay asleep, and he was almost crushed to death when fortunately Abner moved them and David made his escape. Conscious of his vast strength, he once cried out, "If only I could seize the earth at some point, I should be able to take it. I should be able to shake it." Even in the hour of death, wounded mortally by Joab, he grasped his murderer like a worsted ball. He was about to kill him, but the people crowded around them and said to Abner, "If thou killest Joab, we shall be orphaned, and our wives and children will be the prey to the Philistines." Abner replied, "What can I do?" He was about to extinguish my light. The people consoled him, "Commit thy cause to the true judge." Abner thereupon loosed his hold upon Joab, who remained unharmed, while Abner fell dead instantly. Yahuwah had decided against him. The reason was that Joab was in a measure justified in seeking to avenge the death of his brother Asahel. Asahel was the supernaturally swift runner, so swift that he ran through a field without snapping the ears of wheat, had been the attacking party. We also know that Naphtali could run so fast like this that he could run across the grains of the field without snapping the ears, right? And we can read that in the book of Jasher. Greetings. The reason was that Joab was in a measure justified in seeking to avenge the death of his brother Asahel. Asahel, the supernaturally swift runner, so swift that he ran through a field without snapping the ears of wheat, had been the attacking party. He had sought to take Abner's life, and Abner contended that in killing Asahel, he had but acted in self-defense. Before inflicting the fatal wound, Joab held a formal court of justice over Abner. He asked, Why did thou not render Asahel harmless by wounding him rather than kill him?" Abner replied that he could not have done it. "What?" said Joab, incredulous. "If thou was able to strike him under the 5th rib, thus thou mean to say thou couldst not have made him innocuous by a wound and save him alive? Although Abner was a saint, even a lion in the law, he perpetrated many a deed that made his violent death appear just. It was in his favor that he had refused to obey Saul's command to do away with the priest of Nob. Yet a man of his stamp should not have rested content with passive resistance. He should have interposed actively and kept Saul from executing his blood design. And granted that Abner could not have influenced the king's mind in this matter, at all events, he is censurable for having frustrated a reconciliation between Saul and David. When David, holding in his hand the corner of the king's mantle, which he had cut off, sought to convince Saul of his innocence, it was Abner who turned the king against the suppliant fugitive. Concern not thyself about it, he said to Saul. David found the rag on a thorn bush in which thou did catch the skirt of thy mantle as thou did pass it. On the other hand, no blame attached to Abner for having espoused the cause of Saul's son against David for 2 years and a half. He knew that Yahuwah had designated David for the royal office, but according to an old tradition, Yahuwah had promised two kings to the tribe of Benjamin, and Abner considered it his duty to transmit his father's honor to the son of Saul, the Benjamite. Another figure of importance during Saul's reign, but a man of radically different character, was Doeg. Doeg, the friend of Saul from the days of his youth, died when he was 34 years old. Yet, at that early age, he had been president of the Sanhedrin and the greatest scholar of his time. He was called Edomi, which means not Edomite, but he who causes the blush of shame, because by his keen mind and his learning, he put to shame all who entered into the argument with him. But his scholarship lay only on his lips, and his heart was not concerned in it, and his one aim was to elicit admiration. Small wonder, then, that his end was disastrous. At the time of his death, he had sunk so low that he forfeited all share in the life to come. Wounded vanity caused his hostility to David, who had got the better of him in a learned discussion. From that moment, he bent all his energies to the task of ruining David. He tried to poison Saul's mind against David by praising the latter inordinately, and so arousing Saul's jealousy. Again, he would harp on David's Moabite descent and maintain, hold on. That's right. Okay, hold on, y'all. Again, he would harp on David's Moabite descent and maintain that on account of it, he could not be admitted into the congregation of Israel. Samuel and other prominent men had to bring to bear all the weight of their authority to shield David against the consequences of Doeg's sophistry. Doeg's most grievous transgression, however, was his informing against the priests of Nob, whom he accused of high treason and executed as traitors. For all his iniquitous deeds, he pressed the law into his service and derived justification of his conduct from it. Abimelech, the high priest at Nob, admitted that he had consulted the Urim and the Thummim for David. This served Doeg for the basis for the charge of treason, and he stated it as an unalterable halakha that the Urim and the Thummim may be consulted only for a king. That's right, Tiffany. That's why I paused. Yo, she said Grandma Ruth was a Moabite. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Right? Look. Like it had been obvious all this time, just didn't think about it. Like to just now today, just actually called it out, but all this time we've been reading it. That's right. That's why he didn't complete. I've been saying it. That's why Yahuwah didn't completely annihilate the Ammonites and the Moabites. He said, because there's a treasure down there, right? He said, have a treasure down in the generations, right? Who was it? Ruth and Naomi, right? But who comes from Ruth? I'm thinking now, y'all. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna keep reading. Right, Tiffany, you got what I paused for. Okay. Okay. All right. I got to look at some stuff. Abimelech, the high priest at Nob, admitted that he had consulted the Urim and the Thummim for David. This served Doeg as the basis for the charge of treason, and he stated it as an unalterable halakha that the Urim and the Thummim may be consulted only for a king. In vain, Abner and Amasa and all the other members of the Sanhedrin demonstrated that the Urim and the Thummim may be consulted for any on whose undertaking concerns the general welfare. Doeg would not yield, and as no one could be found to execute the judgment, he himself officiated as hangman. When the motive of revenge actuated him, he held cheap alike the life and honor of his fellow man. He succeeded in convincing Saul that David's marriage with the king's daughter Michal had lost its validity from the moment David was declared a rebel. As such, he said David was as good as dead since a rebel was outlawed. Since a rebel was outlawed, hence his wife was no longer bound to him. Doeg's punishment accorded with his misdeeds. He who had made impious use of his knowledge of the law completely forgot the law, and even his disciples rose up against him and drove him from the house of study. In the end, he died a leper. Dreadful as this death was, it was not accounted an atonement for his sins. One angel burned his soul, and another scattered his ashes in all the house of study and prayer. The son of Doeg was Saul's armor bearer, who was killed by David for daring to slay the king, even though he longed for death. Along with Abner and Doeg, Jonathan distinguished himself in the reign of his father. His military capacity was joined to deep scholarship. To the latter, he owed his position as Ab-Bet-Din. Nevertheless, he was one of the most modest men known in history. Abinadab was another one of Saul's sons who was worthy of his father, wherefore he was sometimes called Ishvi. As for Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth, he too was reputed a great man. David himself did not scorn to sit at his feet, and he revered Mephibosheth as his teacher. The wrong done to him by David in granting one half of his possessions to Ziba, the slave of Mephibosheth, did not go unavenged. When David ordered the division of the estate of Mephibosheth, a voice from heaven prophesied, Jeroboam and Rehoboam shall divide the kingdom between themselves. Chapter 4. All right. David's birth and descent. David, the elect of Yahuwah, was descended from a family which of itself belonged to the elect of Israel. Let me keep reading. Okay. Those ancestors of his who are enumerated in the Bible by name are all of them men of distinguished excellence. Besides, David was a descendant of Miriam, the sister of Moses, and so the strain of royal aristocracy was reinforced by the priestly aristocracy. Nor was David the first of his family to occupy the throne of a ruler. His great grandfather Boaz was one and the same person. Wait. Okay. Boaz. Okay. All right, just bring me back on track now. Okay. His great grandfather Boaz, who married Ruth. Okay. I'm back on track now with my thinking. All right. Okay. Okay. Nor was David the first, right? Because it tracks through the mail. Right. That's right. Okay, Tiffany, for a second. What threw me off was Ruth was a Moabite, but I had completely forgot that she had married Boaz, who himself was of Israel, right? And so that's I'm like, wait, hold on. And it threw me off for a second because Boaz didn't come to mind just yet. But okay, since it's tracked through the mail, he is Israel. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Besides, David was a descendant of Miriam, the sister of Moses, and so the strain of royal aristocracy was reinforced by priestly aristocracy. Nor was David the first of his family to occupy the throne of a ruler. His great grandfather Boaz was one and the same person with Isban, the judge of Bethlehem. Othniel, too, the first judge in Israel after the death of Joshua, and Caleb, the brother of Othniel, were connected with David's family. As examples of piety and virtue, David had his grandfather, and more particularly his father, before him. His grandfather's whole life was a continuous service to Yahuwah, whence his name Obed, the servant. And his father Jesse was one of the greatest scholars of his time, and one of the four who died holy, untainted by sin. If Yahuwah had not ordained death for all the descendants of our first parents after their fall, Jesse would have continued to live forever. As it was, he died at the age of 400, and then a violent death by the hand of the Moabite king, in whose care David, trusting in the ties of kinship between the Moabites and the seed of Ruth, left his family when he was fleeing before Saul. Now, I no longer think that it's a stretch to live past 100. I don't even think now that it's a stretch to live past 200. I have even read something about a man in India who was 400 something years old. Now, have I seen this man? No, I haven't seen it with my eyes, but I read the historical accounts, right? I don't know if this man is still alive or not. Simply, sometimes it's kind of hard for us to believe, right? Especially because we're living in such a fast paced world of convenience and dying by convenience, right? But I began to realize, look, when you get your bodies in order, it seems like, well, it don't seem like it does. Aging begins to reverse itself, right? So my thinking and my mind expansion on these things is climbing daily, especially as I'm reading more through the book that I told you guys about. I know some of y'all are reading it. BlackRoots Science, that get into the history of the ancient Black races, and it tells you how they lived so long. And this is, and 400 years is nothing, right? Look, and it goes into, look, read the book, y'all. I don't know. I might consider that's a long book though. It is 2 volumes. I don't know. I gave y'all all the links. Y'all can listen to it yourself. Very clear reading on YouTube. She ain't got to the second book yet. She's finishing up the first one. But right now is 60 video as of day before yesterday. There are 60 videos. It's a video for each chapter. Some chapters are only like 3 minutes long. I think the longest one so far was probably like 1 hour and 11 minutes on the longer chapters. Matter of fact, and I think the first longest chapter was when it was talking about, not cosmology. No, it's talking about the true descendants of Yahuwah, or in the book it's titled Yahweh, right? The children of Israel. That's in there, right? I considered reading it. I really considered reading it, but I don't know. I'm gonna keep thinking about it because there's information in there. I think it's for our people only, really. And really, I mean, I guess anybody could listen to it, but they won't be able to benefit from it like the melanated people would, right? Because our bodies are different in a way, right? We hold melanin. They're considered the light races, and they don't have the melanin and a couple other things in our body. Although we're made the same, we're not made the same, which is why if you think about it, think about all the I was thinking about this yesterday. actually for the last couple of days, I mentioned to my sister, thinking about all the experiments that they've done on melanated people. Even I think it's Henrietta Lacks. What's her last name? Lacks. Anyway, the woman, she's been dead for years now. Matter of fact, her family just won a settlement not too long ago because they hadn't been paid for the scientific experiments and stuff that they had been doing with this black woman's cells, right? Think about all the things they think black people don't feel pain. Like all of this stuff is beginning to make a lot of sense to me now, right? Especially now reading some of this, and it's people that really think that we are gods. Hence some of the experiments and things that they've done over us through the years, cutting up women, cutting into them, into their cervix and all of this stuff, trying to see like how can you produce like they're trying to figure out what that key factor is in melanated people that causes some of the things in our bodies to happen where we can begin to eat better and literally begin to age backwards, but they seem to age, they constantly age forward, right? They may get a little bit better health for a little while, but it always seems like they just rapidly deteriorate, right? And they're trying to figure out that God gene that melanated people hold, and more so the Negro folk, right? There's something there. They ain't telling you about it, but they telling you about it in everything they do. In the movies, all this stuff. Would you post some of the links of that book here, please? Yeah, I will. Right in here. I'll post it in. Let me see. I'll post it. I can't post it in the chat because if I kind of click on, oh, maybe I can. I would have to go. Hold on. Let me finish reading. But I always post it in like for the last week though. If you go back to last week's videos on YouTube, if you do the drop down on a description, you will see after the daily reading stuff at the bottom. You can go down and click on those links. Aliyah, it's something there. But I post them here today too. After we done with the reading. Okay, so but yeah, I said all that. I got on it because of the age length and stuff. And we know that as we begin returning to our ancient roots, that a lot of things we're going to be remembering, information that has been kept from us from so long. It's coming back to us, different portions of our people getting at different pieces of information. And as we come together, we can put these pieces of the puzzle together and begin to live like our ancient ancestors live. Man, yes, Dana. Yes, that book. Yeah. Shabazz reads it on their channel. Yeah, Shabazz BlackRoots. She reads it on their channel. Right, but it's called BlackRoots Science, So, but my book is upstairs. But like I said, I always post the PDF version. If you want to order it from Amazon, I ordered it from Amazon too because I need to have like the hardback so I can mark it up. So I ordered both versions. Both versions was like $30. One was $29. I think the other one was $24. Anyway, I also got the price in there with the Amazon link. And also I posted the YouTube channel, the playlist where she begins reading from the first book, y'all. So I didn't pretty much I was reading the first book and the second book simultaneously until I found out there was a good, clear reading of almost the entire first book. And she's daily, well, I'll say weekly, adding to it until she get through it, right? And she just about done with the first book. So like I said, it's already 60 chapters in there. And I'm sure she's going to read the second one as well. So I guess that'll be completed in a couple months as she goes through. But it ain't gonna take you no time to listen to it the first time. And some of them chapters I've already listened to. Like I know one of them I done listened to like 4 times already. I'm like, what? And I'm starting to look at more things around this earth and in our life. I'm like, wait a minute. I know that to be true from experience. And it's just like, wait, what? I'm like, I'm about to, me. It's like, okay, this is legal and this is for real. We're going to test this. We're going to test this. I'm testing. I'm keeping the meat, spitting out the bones, right? So y'all get it if y'all ain't got it. All right, I'm going to go back here. Talking about the lifespan. His grandfather's whole life was a continuous service to Yahuwah, whence his name Obed, the servant, and his father Jesse was one of the greatest scholars of his time, and one of the four who died wholly untainted by sin. If Yahuwah had not ordained death for all the descendants of our first parents after their fall, Jesse would have continued to live forever. As it was, he died at the age of 400, and then a violent death by the hand of a Moabite king, in whose care David, trusting in the ties of kinship between the Moabites and the seed of Ruth, left his family when he was fleeing before Saul. Jesse's piety will not go unrewarded. In the Messianic time, he will be one of the 8 princes to rule over the world. In spite of his piety, Jesse was not always proof against temptation. One of his slaves caught his fancy, and he would have entered into illicit relations with her had his wife, Nazbat, the daughter of Adiel, not frustrated the plan. She disguised herself as the slave, and Jesse, deceived by the ruse, met his own wife. Look, hold on. Look, ain't that something though? Look, that says a couple different things. Look, he was pious. He was a real good man, but beautiful women caught his eye. Look, hold on. Why would his wife even try to trick him? Look, and he was attracted to his own wife when she dressed up like another woman, right? Look. In spite of his piety, Jesse was not always proof against temptation. One of his slaves caught his fancy, and he would have entered into illicit relations with her had his wife, Nazbat, the daughter of Adiel, not frustrated the plan. Oh, okay, right. Okay, she disguised herself as the slave, and Jesse, deceived by the ruse, met his own wife. The child born by Nazbat was given out as the son of the freed slave, so that the father might not discover the deception practiced upon him. This child was David. Hold on. Look. She disguised herself as the slave, and Jesse, deceived by the ruse, met his own wife. The child born by Nazbat was given out as the son of the freed slave, so that the father might not discover the deception practiced upon him. This child was David. In a measure, David was indebted for his life to Adam. That's right. If we go all the way back, I know what it's about to say. Look, because remember, Adam, at creation, Adam saw all the generations to come, right? But it also talks about how Adam gave a portion of his life to King David. Look. In a measure, David was indebted for his life to Adam. At first, only 3 hours of existence had been allotted to him. When Yahuwah caused all future generations to pass in review before Adam, he besought Yahuwah to give David 70 of the 1,000 years destined for him, a deed of gift signed by Yahuwah, and the angel Metatron was drawn up. You know, Metatron is the angel of the face, was also Enoch, right? 70 years were legally conveyed from Adam to David, and in accordance with Adam's wishes, beauty, dominion, and poetical gift went with them. Anointed king. Beauty and talent, Adam's gifts to David, did not shield their possessor against hardship. As the supposed son of a slave, he was banished from association with his brothers, and his days were passed in a desert tending his father's sheep. It was his shepherd life that prepared him for his later exalted position. With gentle consideration, he led the flocks entrusted to him. The young lambs he guided to pastures of tender grass. The patches of less juicy herbs he reserved for the sheep, and the full-grown sturdy rams were given the tough weeds for food. Then Yahuwah said, David knows how to tend sheep. Therefore, he shall be the shepherd of my flock Israel. Think about Moses too, right? Remember, Moses was tending the flocks of Jethro. Remember, he was so into his work that Yahuwah said, I gotta distract this man. He said, otherwise he gonna keep on working. He's so faithful. I'm gonna have to do something to get this man to stop working. Look. Yeah, I know, right? Aliyah. He said, guess that goes to show, regardless of how pious we may seem like through the eyes of others, but we are all dealing with some sort of addictions. Yeah, everybody got something they dealing with, right? Okay. Hold on. Then Yahuwah said, David knows how to tend sheep. Therefore, he shall be the shepherd of my flock Israel. In the solitude of the desert, David had opportunities of displaying his extraordinary physical strength. One day, he slew 4 lions and 3 bears, though he had no weapons. His most serious adventure was with the reem. Y'all remember the reem, right? Look, I thought about it too. Tiffany said, help me understand how his wife had a baby that was passed off as the son of a slave to avoid the husband knowing. Right? That's what I thought. Like your wife had to know you were pregnant. Did you not sleep with your wife after look, but think about it though. It doesn't say that they were living in the same house. You know, they had all this land. I don't know, she could have been wearing big clothing and stuff, right? But also, the law also teaches us, and it said Jesse was real pious, right? It said he was real pious. So he knew the law and he was scholarly, right? He was scholarly. So he knew that if he was to go into another woman, right, he was not to return into his wife. So maybe he thought about that and he just kind of automatically kept it. And his wife didn't, she didn't come after him for nothing. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how did the baby get passed off. Well, hold on, Jesse. Who was it? Is it Jesse? If Jesse didn't know that his own wife was pregnant, hold on. Yeah, if Jesse didn't know that his wife was pregnant, she could have gotten away with a whole 9 months of being pregnant and not being discovered, right? And I guess she just went to the slave girl, you want a baby? I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Had to be something like that. I don't know. Maybe he was on the trip. He could have been on the trip. Mama said maybe he was out the war. Maybe he was on the trip. I don't know. Clearly, Jesse didn't find out, right? Jesse didn't find out he had impregnated his own wife, right? Because it said he didn't know the deception that was that was done to him by his own wife. He literally impregnated his own wife, right? I don't know. Well, right, yeah, right. But what if Jesse had more than one wife, like we see it through the motherland, like when Reuben defiled his dad's woman, Jacob never went back into her. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's yeah. So he knew the law, so he knew had he gone into another woman, he couldn't come back into his wife, right? So I'm thinking that's probably what it was. Don't quote me, because sometimes I be saying stuff. Well, I'll put it out there, but I'll say don't quote me. I can't say because I haven't read all the information yet. And it could be another part that's expounding on this because I haven't read through all of it. Or I listened to most of it, but I don't know if it's going to come up later. I don't know. We're going to see. But anyway, he thought he did something wrong. But in actuality, he did do something wrong. He was going to commit adultery with the slave girl, right? But his wife intercepted the plan. And so he slept with his own wife. Like, wait, first of all, I don't know. I be thinking like, my G, y'all got lights. Was she covered the whole time you was going into her? Like, did she keep her face covered? Like, did you not know this was your wife? Right. And first of all, do you not know your wife's body? That once you got in there, you didn't realize it was her. Like, I don't know. Why did he go get his youngest son? Why he go get his youngest son? Oh, Dana, you saying so why after maybe he found out that the slave girl was pregnant, had a baby, or what, or why didn't he go get him? Is that what you're saying? If he thought the slave girl had a baby, why? You said, why did he go get his youngest son? Or is it supposed to be, why didn't he go get his youngest son? I don't know. I'm going to keep reading. All right. And I'll look back up in a second. Okay. Then Yahuwah said, David knows how to tend sheep. Therefore, he shall be the shepherd of my flock Israel. In the solitude of the desert, David had opportunities of displaying his extraordinary physical strength. One day, he slew 4 lions and 3 bears, though he had no weapons. His most serious adventure was with the reem. David encountered the mammoth beast asleep, and taking it for a mountain, began to ascend it. Suddenly, the reem awoke, and David found himself high up in the air on its horns. David vowed he vowed if he were rescued to build a temple to Yahuwah 100 ells in height, as high as the horns of the reem. Thereupon Yahuwah sent a lion. The king of the beasts inspired even the reem with awe. The reem prostrated himself, and David could easily descend from his perch. At that moment, a deer appeared. The lion pursued after him, and David was saved from the lion as well as the reem. He continued to lead the life of a shepherd until, at the age of 28, he was anointed king by Samuel, who was taught by a special revelation that the despised young son of Jesse was to be king. Samuel's first charge had been to anoint one of the sons of Jesse, but he was not told which one. Okay, I think I know what you're talking about, Dana. Samuel. Okay, in scripture later, when Samuel anointed to be king. Okay. So apparently Jesse knew that David was his son, but I'm believing still at this time he still didn't realize that it was by his very own wife, right? He still thought it was a slave girl, which is why David kind of grew up as a slave, right? Where he really should not have, right? So it's kind of orchestrated by Yahuwah in order to get him the training that he needed in order to become king, right? Yahuwah tends to do that a lot of times. He separates his people, from places in order that they would get a different type of training that they wouldn't normally get if they stayed at home, right? It's it's awesome that when you see how he does that. And sometimes people just be fighting against the process, right? And it's like if you understood that, you'll go happy. All right, you preparing me for my position, whatever it is you sent me here to do. Okay. He continued. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. The lion pursued after him, and David was saved from the lion as well as the reem. He continued to lead the life of a. He continued to lead the life of a shepherd until at the age of 28 he was anointed king by Samuel, who was taught by a special revelation that the despised young son of Jesse was to be king. Samuel's first charge had been to anoint one of the sons of Jesse, but he was not told which one. When he saw the oldest, Eliab, he thought him to be the king of Yahuwah's choice. Yahuwah had allowed him to be deceived in order to punish Samuel for his excessive self-consciousness in calling himself the seer. It was thus proved to him that he could not foresee all things. However, Samuel's error was pardonable. Yahuwah's first choice had rested upon Eliab. Only on account of his violent nature, his swiftness to anger against David, the position destined for him was transferred to his youngest brother. Eliab was a sense compensated by seeing his daughter become the wife of Rehoboam. Thus, he too enjoys the distinction of being among the ancestors of the Judaic or the Hebrew kings, and Samuel's vision of Eliab as king was not wholly false. The election of David was obvious from what had happened with the holy oil with which he was anointed. When Samuel had tried to pour the oil on David's brothers, it had remained in the horn, but at David's approach, it flowed out of its own accord and poured itself out over him. The drops on his garments changed into diamonds. The amazement was great that the son of a slave should be made king. Then the wife of Jesse revealed her secret and declared herself the mother of David. The anointing of David was for a time kept a secret, but its effect appeared in the gift of prophecy, which manifested itself in David and in his extraordinary spiritual development. His new accomplishments naturally earned envy for him. None was more bitterly jealous than Doeg, the greatest scholar of his time. When he heard that Saul was about to have David come to his court as his attendant, Doeg began to praise David excessively with the purpose of arousing the king's jealousy and making David hateful in his eyes. He succeeded, yet Saul did not relinquish his plan of having David at court. David had become known to Saul in his youth, and at that time the king had conceived great admiration for him. The occasion was on which David had shown cleverness as well as love of justice. A rich woman had to leave her home temporarily. She could not carry her fortune with her, nor did she wish to entrust it to anyone. She adopted the device of hiding her gold in honey jars, and these she deposited with a neighbor. Accidentally, he discovered what was in the jars, and he abstracted the gold. On her return, the woman received her vessels, but the gold concealed in them was gone. She had no evidence to bring up her faithless neighbor, and the court dismissed her complaint. She appealed to the king, but was equally powerless to help. When the woman came out of the palace of the king, David was playing with his companions. Seeing her dejection, he demanded an audience of the king that truth might prevail. The king authorized him to do as he saw fit. David ordered the honey jars to be broken, and two corners were found to adhere to the inner side of the vessels. The thief had overlooked them, and they proved his dishonesty. Encounter with Goliath. David was not long permitted to enjoy the ease of life at court. The aggressive manner assumed by Goliath drove him to the front. It was a curious chance that designated David to be the slayer of Goliath, who was allied with him by the ties of blood. Goliath, it will be remembered, was the son of the Moabitess Ophrah. Yep, remember the two daughter-in-laws of Naomi, Ruth and Ophrah. Ophrah didn't stay. Remember, we learned back then when we read about it, when she decided to go back to her own people, Yahuwah said, at least them 4 miles that she walked with them, he was going to bless her. And thus Goliath came from her loins, right? Okay. Look. Goliath, it will be remembered, was the son of the Moabitess Ophrah, the sister-in-law of David's ancestress Ruth, and her sister as well, both having been the daughters of the Moabite king Eglon. David and Goliath differed as widely as their grandams, for in contrast to Ruth, the pious religious Hebrew, Ophrah had led a life of unspeakable infamy. Her son Goliath was jeered at as the son. Oh my gosh. Look, they ain't got no filter back in the day. Look. Her son Goliath was jeered at as the son of 100 fathers and one mother. Right to the heart, right? Oh, oh my gosh. Like, he just called you your mama a whore to your face. And you're the son of a whore, right? That's gotta hurt. But they use it in different words. Her son Goliath was jeered at as the son of 100 fathers and one mother. But Yahuwah let this not go unrewarded. But Yahuwah lets not go unrewarded, even in the wicked. In return for the 40 steps Ophrah had accompanied her mother-in-law Naomi, Goliath the Philistine, her son, was permitted to display his strength and skill for 40 years. And in return for the 400 tears Ophrah had shed on parting from her mother-in-law, she was privileged to give birth to 4 giant sons. One of the 4, Goliath, was the strongest and greatest. What the scripture tells about him is but a small fraction of what might have been told. The scriptures refrain intentionally from expatiating upon the prowess of the miscreant, nor do they tell how Goliath, impious as he was, dared to challenge the God of Israel to combat with him, and how he tried by every means in his power to hinder the Israelites in their divine worship. Morning and evening, he would appear in the camp at the very time when the Israelites were preparing to say the Shema. All the more cause then for David to hate Goliath and determine to annihilate him. His father encouraged him to oppose Goliath, for he considered it David's deputy to protect. For he considered it David's deputy to protect Saul the Benjamite against the giant, as Judah, his ancestor, had in the ancient days pledged himself for the safety of Benjamin, the ancestor of Saul. For Goliath was intent upon doing away with Saul. His grievance against him was that once, when in a skirmish between the Philistines and the Israelites, Goliath had succeeded in capturing the holy tables of the law. Saul had wrested them from the giant. In consequence of his malady, Saul could not venture to cross swords with Goliath, and he accepted David's offer to enter into combat in his place. David put on Saul's armor, and when it appeared that the armor of the powerfully built king fitted the erstwhile slender youth, Saul recognized that David had been predestined for the serious task he was about to undertake. But at the same time, David's miraculous transformation did not fail to arouse his jealousy. David, for this reason, declined to array himself as a warrior for his contest with Goliath. He wanted to meet him as a simple shepherd. 5 pebbles came to David of their own accord, and when he touched them, they all turned into one pebble. The 5 pebbles stood for Yahuwah, the 3 patriarchs, and Aaron. Hophni and Phinehas, the descendants of the last, had only a short time before been killed by Goliath. Scarcely did David begin to move toward Goliath when the giant became conscious of the magic power of the youth. The evil eye David cast upon his opponent sufficed to afflict him with leprosy, and in the very same instant, he was rooted to the ground, unable to move. Goliath was so confused by his impotence that he scarcely knew what he was saying, and he uttered the foolish threat that he would give David's flesh to the cattle of the field, as though the cattle ate flesh. One can see, David said to himself, that he is crazy, and there can be no doubt that he is doomed. Sure of victory, David resorted that he would cast the carcass of the Philistines to the fowls of the air. That he would cast the carcass of the Philistine to the fowls of the air. At the mention of fowls, Goliath raised his eyes skyward to see whether there were any birds about. The upward motion of his head pushed his visor slightly away from his forehead, and in that instant, the pebble aimed by David struck him on the exposed spot. An angel descended and cast him to the ground face downward, so that the mouth that had blasphemed Yahuwah might be choked with earth. He fell in such wise that the image of Dagon, which he wore on his breast, touched the ground, and his head came to lie between the feet of David, who now had no difficulty in dispatching him. Goliath was encased from top to toe in several suits of armor, and David did not know how to remove them and cut off the head of the giant. At this juncture, Uriah the Hittite offered him his services, but under the condition that David secure him a Hebrew wife. David accepted the condition, and Uriah in turn showed him how the various suits of armor were fastened together at the heels of the giant's feet. Hey, chill. David's victory naturally added fuel to the fire of Saul's jealousy. Saul sent Abner, his general, to make inquiry whether David, who he knew was of the tribe of Judah belonged to the clan of the Perez or to the clan of the Zerah. In the former case, his suspicion that David was destined for kingship would be confirmed. Doeg, David's enemy from of old, observed that David, being the descendant of the Moabitess Ruth, did not even belong to the Hebrew community, and Saul's need entertained no fears from that quarter. A lively discussion arose between Abner and Doeg as to whether the law in Deuteronomy regarding Moabites affected women as well as men. Doeg, an expert in dialectician, brilliantly refuted all of Abner's arguments in favor. Hold on. Refuted all of Abner's arguments in favor of the admission of the Moabitish women. Samuel's authority had to be appealed in order to establish for all times the correctness of Abner's view. Indeed, the dispute could be settled only by recourse to the threats of violence. Ithra, the father of Amasa, in Arab fashion, for which reason he was sometimes called the Ishmaelite, threatened to hew down anyone with his sword who refused to accept Samuel's interpretation of the law, that male Moabites and male Ammonites are forever excluded from the congregation of Israel, but not Moabite and Ammonite women. All right, y'all. So there we are going to stop. And we'll pick it back up tomorrow. Pursued by Saul. You know, he hot about David right now. About Listen, hold on, pause. Wow. Is that yours? You're not about to start that this morning. All right. Chill out. I'll get you another one. Hold on. Mom! I just said I'd get you another one. Chill out. All right, y'all. So that was Judges 13. Judges 13, 14, and 15. And we read Legends of the Jews. We started on page 408 and we paused on page 410. I'm sorry, 412. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. It is Monday, March the 15th, 2021. Day 102 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets and of the 3-year consecutive day count. It is day 771. That is without the feast days and the Sabbath feast days added into the count. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Okay. Go back over here.
Mom, I press button.
No, don't press it yet, too. Okay. Okay, yeah. That him cutting off, he said, okay, I don't get why the Most High was mad with David for cutting Saul's piece of garment when Saul wanted him dead. Actually, it was preordained. That's how Saul would know, because we read back I think it's a couple days now, before David had even come to mind. Saul wasn't even thinking about David, right? He didn't know who the next king would be, but that was a sign whereby Yahuwah told him who would be king. All right, man, let me just drive safe. He said, the one Samuel told King Saul, the one who cuts a corner of your robe is he who Yahuwah has chosen to be king. And so when that happened, he knew that surely David was king, right? So it was kind of a preordained thing. Although Yahuwah did punish David for doing that, it's kind of like preordained, but he was still punished for it because he shouldn't have did it. But Yahuwah knew he was going to do it, and so he just used that. He said, this is how you know who's going to be king, the one who's going to cut off the corner of your robe. But it also tells us that Yahuwah got David for doing that, because he should have never raised his hand towards Yahuwah's chosen, right? And King Saul was Yahuwah's chosen. Although he died a horrible death, we'll see King Saul. We'll see King Saul in the world to come because he was a righteous and a pious man. He just kind of he had a momentary lapse of sanity, which caused him the rulership, right? And his death. But Yahuwah, he said King Saul, he said he gets a great portion in the world to come, right? Because he was a righteous king. All right. Okay. All right, y'all. With that being said, today is day 1 of the new month. The new moon was spotted, although I couldn't see it because it was cloudy here. I had to start checking again, and so the reports started coming in all over the world that it was spotted, and they started showing the times. I was like, okay, I feel better now. I can go ahead and call it because different parts and through Africa and Australia and different places were calling. I was like, okay, clearly it's seen. Although it was cloudy here and I couldn't see it, and I was looking for it. I'm like, Father, okay, so. It was spotted March the 14th, 2021. So today, it's the first day, begins the first day as we start to count over for the Sabbath, meaning that the Sabbaths now fall on Sundays, right? So new moon is kind of like the line leader of the Sabbath. Whatever day the new moon falls on, the Sabbaths also fall on that day. So we jump from Friday Sabbaths. Now we are at Sunday Sabbaths, right? Okay. So that's that. And now that we verified the new moon, we can officially begin to count. And so Passover will be in 14 days, or 13 days now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, 12 days now, right? It would be on the 27th, Saturday, all right, which is the 14th day of the month. And the very next day, Sunday, is a high holy day or a high Sabbath. And it is also a day of rest because it is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Remember, the first day and the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Sukkot are Sabbaths. Well, guess what? It also falls on the actual Sabbath. That's why they call them high holy days, right? This is a true high holy. Maybe I shouldn't do the finger pumps because it's true, right? No, I'm saying high holy day, but they celebrate them on unclean days. But it truly is a high holy day. It's like a double Sabbath, right? It's indeed a true Sabbath day, but it also is the first day of unleavened bread, which is also considered a Sabbath day, right? So, which tells us that we got our counting together, because I think that's there as a measure to make sure we get our counts right, because the first day of unleavened bread should be on the Sabbath. And we know we got the count right? Hey. Blessed be the most holy, because I couldn't have figured that out until I started tracking it. And it's like, pay attention, girl, pay attention. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, wait a minute. These actually fall on Sabbath days? These are like true Sabbath days? Yeah, so I just get chills down in my shana every time I think about it. So, okay, y'all. So if y'all counting, we got the days right now. Passover begins the 27th of March, which is Saturday. And remember, the actual Passover event is like the span of a few hours. The first part of the day is preparation time, right? Preparing your meal and everything. But it says at sundown, right? Sundown here is not the only time. It mentions sundown here in the Day of Atonement, y'all, right? It's the only time Yahuwah actually calls out doing it at sundown. Why? Because it's different from all the other days. Everybody, you're taught from the Jewish side that everything is sundown. It's not. Pay attention to what's there in front of your face. He would not have to call it out if it was already being done. There is a distinction on these days. People want to crucify me, but I'm telling you what's there. Go read it. Figure out a way to test the principle, right? I'm telling you, if you test the principle and don't just keep regurgitating garbage that's pushed to you, verify the information you get, people. Even if it comes from me, go verify it, right? because it's going to be on you, right? Either you're going to be blessed by it or you're not going to be blessed by it. So I'm just saying, right? Okay, and so the Passover meal should be eaten before midnight or twilight. I think midnight and twilight is the same time. Is it midnight and twilight the same time? I don't know. I never really looked that up. I just kind of assume, but I need to look that up, midnight and twilight. I don't want to be using the wrong words. I'm gonna have to look it up. Midnight and twilight, see if it's the same thing. Okay. So the actual Passover event begins at sundown on the 14th day of the month, and it goes throughout the night, right? And the very next day at evening, listen, and I explained this before. Here's what throws people off. The word they use the word evening and it threw people off, right? So let me explain this again real quick. Okay, so when you read in the beginning in Genesis, an evening and morning were the first day, right? So if you go back up, Yahuwah said he had to separate the light from the darkness, right? Morning is a part of the daytime hours when the sun is standing his watch. Evening, listen, pay attention. Evening is also a part of the day where the sun stands his watch, right? Because light and dark was separated by a separation called evening. We can see this as clear as day if we go outside and we pay attention. It's just like a stoplight, a traffic light, right? You got the green light. You got the separation between the two extremes, right? You got the two extremes, light and darkness. But you just can't go from light to darkness. You have collisions all over the place. Green, red, green, red. You can't do that. There has to be a transition period or a turning over of the watch, right? And that turning over of the watch or the what you call it, the turnover, the you given what you call it, like medical field, the shift turnover, all that or whatever. There's a period of time, even in the military, right? You standing watch, you're relieved by your watch 15 minutes to 30 minutes prior. So if you were to stand watch at 7, you're to show up at 6:30, right? And you give the turnover. The person going off watch gives the turnover report to the person coming on watch. This is what has been happening this time. Boom, boom, boom. Get everything in order. This is the turnover period. The evening times, there are 2 evening separations, right? And I personally think it was a poor translation of evening periods. They should, when they translate it to English, they should have used the appropriate term, right? We know American English language is synonymous for having words that sound the same but are spelled differently and mean different words, right? Listen, they should have used the proper word for evening, right? Evening is not going into night. What evening is dawn and dusk, right? That's what it should have been. The light is separated from the darkness, meaning it is capped off on both ends, before and behind, by evening periods or dawn and dusk, right? The sun is on watch during the day. Before the sun comes in, the evening period or the yellow light, the transition is the evening into the darkness, right? Into the dark of night. Because if you read Genesis, that's what it says, right? It talks about the light and the darkness. What people fail to realize, the evening and the morning were the first day. It's just talking about the light hours. And when you understand that, it's clearly seen, right? You got the light and then you got the darkness of night, right? And the separated, the light and the day is separated by evening periods on both ends, right? So you got the evening, which caps us off, or the dawn, which caps us off from the previous night of darkness. Just even think about it from the beginning of time. Everything was dark and void, right? Yahuwah had to bring the separation. So say, well, the darkness came first. Okay, the darkness came first. Okay, so then we got to bring in a separation of evening. Okay, evening. Bring that little separation, that yellow light The turnover period from the darkness of night to the light of day. Okay, let's put the separation cap in here. Boom. Separation, yellow light. Then we transition into the day, right? Then as the sun is going off, we got the dusk, right? It's the same night periods. Listen, if you go outside during the dawn and the dusk time of the day, you will not know what part of the day, like if you're discombobulated, just wrote me here. If you're discombobulated, right? You get thrown outside somewhere and you lose track of time and you find yourself in one of the evening periods, whether it's dawn or at dusk, you will not be able to tell what portion of the day you are in until time progresses just a little bit more. If it progresses and it progressively gets lighter, you know you're at the beginning of the day. If you're in the dusk evening portion of the day, you know you're transitioning to the night if the day progresses and it progressively gets darker, right? But those two evening times, or dawn and dusk, look exactly the same. It's the same type of semi-darkness period that's the transition of the light coming in and the light going out. It's a herald. The sun is going off watch. The children of the day need to go in the house, right? You got time to get there, right? Just like it tells you about at sundown, you're preparing. Preparation is about to be dusk. We're going into the darkness of night. This is sundown. You need to be in the house. Like you see the principle flowing all the way through, right? So when I understood that, I'm like, duh, we only see it like every day of our friggin' life when we go outside, right? And if you don't understand that, you can really be taken by everything begins at sundown because it begins at evening. People, even our people amongst us, they will fight you to the death for this principle. And I'm just like, okay, I'm like, pay attention to nature. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, then I realized, I'm like, okay, they don't understand it yet. There's not a cause for us to be fighting and ready to be drawing blood between our brothers and sisters. So I'm just, okay, I'll leave it alone. And for those that can see, that's why I tell you, nature tells the story. Just go out there and pay attention, right? You don't have to believe me. Just go pay attention, right? So when it says evening and morning were the first day, it's talking about the light of day being capped off by the separation from darkness. Where the darkness came first, everything was dark and void. Yes, okay, darkness came first. Boom, we got the separation. The light coming in. This is the watch for the children of the light, the children of the day, for the righteous, the pious, right? And then it's a warning sign. Let the darkness know. Go ahead, back on up. You off watch. Get on up out of here. It's the time for the children of the day, right? Same thing. The evening period over here, let the children of the day. All right, people, get in your house, take cover. It's time for the night watchers. It's time for the night crawlers to come back on. I've given them rule and domain over the night. But here's the yellow light. Go ahead, get on off work, get on into the house, go on, get in there. So everybody knows the separation. Everybody stands their watch. Everybody who need to be in the house during the time of the night need to be in the house at the time of the night, right? Okay, it's principle you can see over and over and over again. All right. So Passover begins at sundown on Saturday. This Saturday coming up, the 27th. Prepare all that day. But also remember, Passover, you are not to eat bread with leaven in it either, right? Although Passover begins the very next day, the very next morning, Sunday, March the 28th, we're commanded with Passover meal to also eat unleavened bread. So we begin eating the unleavened bread, meaning all yeast products, check everything, seasonings, check ice creams, check gum. I don't care what it is. Check everything in your house, in your pantry, your refrigerator, your deep freezer, your cupboard, your cabinet, whatever, bread box, everything. Wherever you store food and keep edible things, check for yeast byproducts, leaven byproducts. Check for all of those things. If you don't know it, go Google it. It's all there. It's more than enough resources. Okay, what are yeast byproducts or all those things? Look for that. Then go looking. Y'all got about 13 days. Get on it. Don't wait till the last minute. I'm telling you, you wait till the last minute. Check your soups too. If you use canned soups or anything like that. If you wait till the last minute, I'm almost certain you're going to overlook something. So start early. Maybe do a little bit every day so everything goes. Don't try to do everything at once. So that's why I keep saying it. So you can prepare. But now, you really have to focus, people. You really have to focus. Okay, so with that being said, we done for the day. I don't think I have anything else. I think that's it. Yep. All right, y'all. So that's it, beautiful people. Okay. Hold on. The light right here. So the name given to each day, that's where the confusions are, right? So dawning thus makes a day, so forth and so on. Hold on. I thought Sunday is the first day of the week, though, because this is confusing with the different days of the Sabbath. It does seem confusing at first when you're just getting back. Just toss everything and start new. Trina said, man, I'm just going to fast. Look, okay. So the whole point of cleaning it out your house, it's to represent you like looking within, right? And you considering your own ways and checking your own heart, getting in there with the flashlight, checking everything. Oh, I thought that was gone. I thought we got rid of that. Okay, you got to go. Come on, you can't be here. Things like that, right? So it's a good practice, especially with your family, and it'll bring up times. Ooh, remember the time you did that? Yahuwah almost killed our whole house, and things like that. I'm kind of joking, but I'm not really joking if that's really happened to you and your family, right? But everybody makes mistakes. I ain't saying he's gonna strike y'all dead or anything. It's a memorial feast, but we should strive to keep them to help us remember, right? My husband would pitch a fit if I clear out the food. He don't understand yet. Okay, I get you. Okay, so look. Okay, so maybe next year you can better prepare, right? As when you make groceries, just kind of be mindful. Learn how to use different seeds. Well, if he's personally buying things that he liked, then I wouldn't touch his stuff and go toss his stuff out. But things that you have control over, like kind of prepare up to the time, okay, unleavened bread is coming up. So you can kind of start going through stuff. You ain't got to make a big deal about it. Just you can quite do like what women do, go through, replace different seasons, substitute them with things that don't have yeast in them. There are a lot of good I wouldn't call them alternative, but there are a lot of good seasons out there where you don't have to use things that have yeast and yeast byproducts, in them. And you can just replace them over the weeks and just kind of make your house yeast-free ready. So you ain't gotta, but if it's things that he's bringing back in that he purchased, okay, then that's fine. You've done your part until he comes on board, what have you, So that's how I kind of do stuff, with my husband over the years. And he's like, wait, what are you doing with this now? So then I had to get somebody to say, okay, Father, this is going to cause a whole explosion in this house if I do this. So, and this is, we just kind of talk about it until he like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, well, all right. Well, shucks. What? It's only for a week? Oh, okay. We can go back and get it afterwards. But let me tell you something. Last unleavened bread, right? Yes, cool.
What did you just say?
I was talking to the people. Look.
Mom, what did you just say?
I don't know. What did I just say, Tootie? Look, last unleavened bread, right?
You say.
He was totally on board with it. Then, when he was out on the job,
I hear you.
I said, shucks.
Yes, I hear you.
I probably did say shucks, but shucks is not a bad word.
But I can't hear you.
Okay, but when he was out, he was working. He had got him something to eat, and it was Arby's. He went to Arby's and everything, and he came back into the house. As soon as he walked back in the house, he's like, "Oh shoot, I forgot it was unleavened bread." He's like, "Father, forgive me, I'm a heathen. I hadn't ate. Look, I had 2 sandwiches too." Like he like walk into the house confessing his sins. Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I'm a heathen. I did. I completely forgot." He was trying. I ain't say nothing to her. I just started laughing. But it was funny that as soon as he stepped through the threshold of the house, he was reminded because he walked in here. I watched him get. He drinking out his cup and everything, was apparently eating on the way, you know, getting out, Papa Fry in his mouth, walking up to the door all nice and happy. As soon as he stepped through the door, and I didn't give him a crazy look either. I was like, hey, babe. And he's like, oh, shoot. I forgot. He said, man, I just ate 2 sandwiches and it was bread in it. And I just started laughing, right? So people, I wasn't doing it perfect. I'm sure I still don't do it perfect. Pootie, hop down. I'm sure I still don't do it perfect. Look, girl. Okay, look. Okay, so the point is we all learning and growing. Yes, Aliyah, we all are learning and growing. Okay. So the days, that's where the confusion comes in, right? So dawn and dusk make a day, so forth and so on. Okay. Yeah, it caps off the day, but listen, the night, I've heard this taught this way, where some people don't even count the night as a part of the day, which is technically not a part of the day, but it does consist. There is darkness in every day period, right? It's just that the day, you know, we start the day at the beginning or whatever. Everything is we kind of get screwed up until we constantly look at it for a while till it makes sense. Because, okay, Sunday, Monday, they've given days names and months names and stuff, and it kind of throws us off as we're adjusting. And that's to be expected. That's normal. It's common as you're adjusting to new things. You know, you may not quite understand it for the first little while until you're in the habit of doing it. Then it's like, oh yeah, oh okay, duh, you know. So that's why, especially if you're just starting in Aliyah, that's why it seems confusing at first. Because it took me 3 years to get to this point. Like, seriously. Okay, Yuka says, once he gathers all his people, then things will get back to normal. Because it's hard for everyone to really follow the Tanakh 100 in our captivity. Yeah. Yeah. But everybody can strive to keep what they know to keep. And as you learn more, then you do what you know to do. That's how I look at it, right? You know, everybody's growing. But yeah, that's how I look at it, right? Do what you know to do. All right, beautiful people. So that's it. We're going ahead and get out of here. It's Monday. I got some work to do shortly. Girl, oh my gosh, you just snatched my ear. Hold on. Okay. All right, y'all. All right, so let me go ahead and get out of here while she's twisting up my head wrap. Bruce. Wait. Okay. All right, y'all. She done stopped Facebook. Thanks, Ali, y'all. It is more blessed to give than receive. Hold on. More. To more is given more. Oh, okay. I said it backwards. Stop, boy, quick. You can't even press the screen. Stop. No, stop. They trying to cut it off. To more is given, more is required. Thank you. Have a blessing. All right, beautiful people. Love y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me today while I stand my
Mom, they have your phone.
I'll see y'all bright and early in the morning. 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bruce.
Mom, they have your phone.